The rain came on a Tuesday in March, the kind that turned Portland's streets into mirrors, reflecting a sky that couldn't decide between gray and silver. Emma Hart stood under the awning of the last page, watching water trace patterns down the window glass, and wondered why she kept coming back to this particular coffee shop when there were at least a dozen closer to her office. She knew why. She'd known since the second week when the man behind the counter, Daniel, his name tag read, though she'd already memorized it, remembered her order without asking. Latte with 1 pump of vanilla, extra hot, no foam. It was a small thing, meaningless probably. But Emma had spent 3 years learning to appreciate small things, to not expect grand gestures that came with grand betrayals. The door chimed as she stepped inside. The shop smelled like dark roast and old books, an odd combination that somehow worked. Daniel looked up from the espresso machine, and there it was again. That fraction of a second where his expression shifted from professional to something softer. Something that made Emma's chest tighten in a way she'd promised herself she wouldn't feel again. "Wet out there," he said, and she almost laughed at the obviousness of it. "I hadn't noticed." She shook rain from her jacket droplets, scattering across the worn wooden floor. He was already reaching for a cup marker poised. The usual, she confirmed, and hated how much she liked that phrase, how it implied continuity, habit, something ongoing. She'd been coming here for 6 weeks now. 6 weeks of the same order, the same time, 7:30 in the morning before the real crowd hit, and the same careful dance of words that never quite said what they meant. "Rough commute?" Daniel asked, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. She watched him work, noticed things she probably shouldn't. The way his fingers gripped the portafilter, the small scar on his left wrist, the fact that he was left-handed. "Traffic was fine, I just left early." Emma set her bag on the counter, pulled out her wallet. Needed the walk. In the rain. Especially in the rain. He glanced at her, then really looked, and she felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with her damp clothes. His eyes were dark, almost black, in the dim light of the shop, and there was something in them that recognized something in her. Two damaged things acknowledging each other across a counter, sticky with spilled sugar. "I get that," he said quietly, and she believed him. The espresso machine hissed, breaking the moment. Daniel turned away, and Emma exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. This was dangerous, this feeling, this pull. She'd promised herself, after David, after Sophie, after the wreckage of what she'd thought was her future, she'd promised no more risks, no more hoping. Hope was what left you standing in a wedding dress you'd never wear, holding an invitation to your ex-fiancé's marriage to your little sister. "Here." Daniel slid the cup across the counter, their fingers brushing as she took it. Neither of them moved for a heartbeat too long. "Thanks." Emma handed him her card, the transaction blessedly normal grounding. "Emma Hart." Daniel read her name off the card, and she realized it was the first time he'd said it aloud. "Architect Wright, I've seen the blueprint sticking out of your bag." She blinked, surprised. "You're observant." "Occupational hazard." He handed back her card. "What are you working on?" "Renovation project, old warehouse downtown, converting it to lofts." Emma wrapped both hands around the cup, letting the heat seep into her palms. "It's all exposed brick and industrial windows. Beautiful bones, just need someone to see the potential." "Sounds like you love it." "I do." And she did, that was the thing. Architecture was reliable. Buildings didn't lie, didn't betray, didn't wake up one day and decide they'd rather be with someone else. "What about you? How long have you had the shop?" Something flickered across Daniel's face, too fast to read. "Almost 2 years. Took over the lease from the previous owner." He wiped down the counter, not meeting her eyes. "It's not what I thought I'd be doing, but it's good, quiet." There was a story there, Emma could feel it. But before she could ask, the door chimed again, and a cluster of college students tumbled in, loud and laughing and shattering the bubble that had formed around them. Daniel's professional smile snapped back into place. "Enjoy your coffee, Emma." She nodded, collected her things, and found her usual table by the window. The rain continued its percussion against glass, and Emma opened her laptop, pulled up her current project files. But her eyes kept drifting to the counter, to Daniel's hands as he worked, to the line of his shoulders, to the way he laughed at something one of the students said. 3 years ago, she would have asked him out already. Would have been bold, confident, certain that the world was full of good things just waiting to be claimed. but that Emma had died the same day she'd found David and Sophie tangled in sheets that smelled like betrayal and cheap wine. This Emma knew better. April arrived with cherry blossoms and the kind of sunshine that felt like a promise Portland couldn't keep. Emma's project was behind schedule, which meant longer hours, more stress, and more early morning visits to the last page. She told herself it was about the coffee, convenient location, good atmosphere, reasonable prices. She didn't acknowledge that she'd tried 3 other shops closer to her office and found them lacking in ways that had nothing to do with caffeine quality and everything to do with the absence of dark eyes and careful hands. "You look exhausted," Daniel said one morning in mid-April, and Emma was too tired to be offended. "Client meeting ran until 9 last night. They want to add another floor, which means reworking all the structural calculations." She rubbed her eyes. "And my sister keeps calling." She hadn't meant to say that last part, hadn't meant to open that door even a crack. "You don't want to talk to her?" Daniel asked, and his tone was carefully neutral, the kind of neutral that invited confidences. Emma considered lying, considered keeping everything locked down the way she had for 3 years. But something about the soft morning light, the empty shop, the way Daniel was looking at her like she was more than just another customer, something made her want to be honest. "We're not close." It was the understatement of the century. "She's getting married. Keeps sending me save the dates even though I've already said I'm not going." "That's rough." "Yeah." Emma took a long sip of her latte, let the heat ground her. "What about you? Do you have siblings?" "Only child." Daniel leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "My mom used to say I was enough trouble for 3 kids combined." The past tense didn't escape Emma's notice. "She passed away. Last year, August." He said it simply, but Emma heard the weight underneath. "Cancer. I'm sorry." "Thanks." He straightened, busied himself wiping down the espresso machine even though it was already clean. "She was the one who suggested I take over this place. Thought I needed something stable, something to focus on." "What were you doing before?" Daniel's hands stilled. For a moment, Emma thought he wouldn't answer. "Then writing, freelance journalism mostly, travel pieces. I was working on a novel." It didn't work out." His voice had gone flat, closed off. "Life got in the way." Emma understood that. Life had a habit of getting in the way of taking your carefully made plans and shredding them like paper. She wanted to ask more to understand the shadows that lived behind his eyes, but a group of morning regulars pushed through the door and the moment dissolved. She stayed longer than usual that morning, ostensibly working on her laptop, but really just watching Daniel navigate the morning rush. He moved like someone who'd done this 1,000 times, but also like someone who was elsewhere in his mind, going through motions that didn't quite fit. When the crowd finally cleared, he brought her a refill without being asked. "On the house," he said when she reached for her wallet. "You can't keep giving me free coffee." "I can if I want to." He pulled out the chair across from her, hesitated. "Do you mind?" Emma's heart kicked against her ribs. "No, please." He sat and she noticed he'd brought his own cup, black coffee, no sugar. They didn't speak for a moment, just sat in the morning light, streaming through windows that needed cleaning, and it should have been awkward, but somehow wasn't. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said finally. "Sure." "Why architecture? What made you want to design buildings?" Emma smiled, the first real smile she'd felt in days. "When I was 8, my parents took us to New York. We went to the top of the Empire State Building, and I remember looking down at all those structures, all those different shapes and styles, and thinking someone imagined all of this. Someone dreamed it and then made it real." She traced the rim of her cup. "I like the idea that you could create something permanent, something that would outlast you." "That's beautiful," Daniel said, and he meant it. "What about your novel? What was it about?" His expression shuddered. "It doesn't matter now. It matters if it mattered to you." Daniel looked at her for a long moment, and Emma felt the weight of that gaze, the way it seemed to catalog and measure and ultimately find her worthy of something. "It was about loss," he said quietly, "and what we do with the pieces left over." Before Emma could respond, his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, and whatever he saw made his face go carefully blank. He stood abruptly. "Back to work." "Daniel, enjoy your coffee, Emma." He was behind the counter before she could say anything else, and the wall was back up between them, solid and unscalable. Emma stared at her laptop, screen, the architectural plans blurring into meaningless lines, and wondered what the text had said to make him retreat so completely. May was a watercolor of rain and occasional sun, the kind of weather that couldn't make up its mind. Emma's warehouse conversion was finally coming together, the structural issues resolved, the client happy. She should have been satisfied. She wasn't, because Daniel had become quieter, more distant, and Emma didn't understand why. He still remembered her order, still smiled when she walked in, but something had changed. The careful attention he'd paid her, the way he'd lean against the counter and talk about nothing and everything, it was gone, replaced by professional efficiency. It shouldn't have hurt. They were barely friends, just customer and barista, and Emma had no right to feel abandoned by someone who had never promised her anything in the first place. But it did hurt. It hurt in a way she hadn't let herself hurt in 3 years, and she hated herself for the weakness. "You've been quiet lately," her therapist, Dr. Morrison, observed during their monthly session. "More than usual." Emma shrugged, studied the ceiling of the office she'd been coming to since the week after she'd called off her wedding. "Just busy with work." "Emma," that was all Dr. Morrison had to say. Just her name in that particular tone, and Emma's careful defenses crumbled like they always did in this room. "I met someone," she admitted. "Sort of. Not really. I don't know." "Tell me." So Emma did. She told Dr. Morrison about the last page about Daniel, about the 6 weeks of careful flirtation that had suddenly cooled into nothing. She told her about lying awake at night, wondering what she'd done wrong, about the way her chest tightened at every time she walked into the shop, hoping this would be the day he'd look at her again the way he had in April. "What are you afraid of?" Dr. Morrison asked when Emma finished. "That I'm doing it again. That I'm seeing something that isn't there, building castles out of crumbs because I'm desperate to feel like I'm not fundamentally unlovable." "Do you think you're unlovable?" I think David and Sophie made their opinion on that pretty clear. David and Sophie made choices based on their own damage, not your worth. Dr. Morrison leaned forward, her expression gentle but firm. "Have you considered that maybe Daniel is dealing with his own issues? That his distance might have nothing to do with you?" Emma had considered it, but considering it and believing it were two different things. "What if I try and it ends badly?" Emma whispered. "What if I open up and he... What if you don't try?" Morrison interrupted. "And spend the rest of your life wondering..." Emma almost didn't go to the shop the next morning. She stood outside for a full 5 minutes, coffee from a different place going cold in her hand, trying to convince herself to just walk away. Cut her losses. Protect herself. But then she thought about Dr. Morrison's words about the warehouse she was renovating, about finding potential in damaged things. She threw away the inferior coffee and walked inside. Daniel looked up and his whole face changed. Brightened. "Emma, I was starting to think you'd found a better place." The relief in his voice was unmistakable, and Emma felt something in her chest unlock. "There is no better place." She approached the counter, hard hammering. "The usual." "The usual," he confirmed, and this time when their fingers touched as he handed over her cup, neither of them pulled away quite as fast. "I'm sorry," Daniel said suddenly, "for being weird lately. It's not you, it's..." He laughed short and bitter. "God, that sounds like a line." "What is it?" Emma asked softly. He glanced around the empty shop, then met her eyes. "I got some news about the building. The owner wants to sell, and I can't afford to buy, which means I have until the end of summer to find a new location or..." He shrugged. "Or close down." "Daniel, it's fine, I'll figure something out. I always do." But he didn't sound convinced. Emma's architectural mind was already spinning, running through properties. She'd seen spaces that might work, numbers and possibilities. "Have you looked at the old pharmacy on Morrison Street, the one with the big windows?" "I know, I haven't really started looking yet." "You should, I think it might be perfect." She pulled out her phone, found the listing she'd bookmarked weeks ago for reasons she hadn't examined too closely. "Here." Daniel took her phone, their hands brushing again, and Emma felt that touch all the way down to her toes. He studied the listing, and slowly his expression shifted from resigned to something like hope. "This could work," he said quietly. "It will work." Emma surprised herself with her certainty. "You'll make it work." He looked at her, then really looked, and Emma felt transparent, seen in a way she'd been avoiding. "Why do you care?" "Because I think about you too much. Because you're the first person in 3 years who's made me want to try again. Because when I imagine Portland without this shop, without you, it feels like losing something I never actually had. Because good coffee shops are hard to find, she said instead, and they both knew it was a lie. Daniel smiled slow and genuine and handed back her phone. Would you, he stopped, reconsidered. Would you want to get dinner sometime? Not here, somewhere else, with actual food. Emma's pulse was a drum in her ears. This was the cliff edge. This was the moment where she either jumped or spent the rest of her life wiping them all and achingly alone. Yes, she heard herself say. I'd like that. Yeah, he looked almost surprised, like he'd expected her to refuse. Yeah. They stood there smiling at each other like idiots until the door chimed and reality intruded in the form of the morning rush. But as Emma settled at her table laptop, opened coffee warm in her hands, she felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. She felt like maybe possibly she could be brave. June came in humid and restless, the air thick with the promise of storms that wouldn't break. Emma and Daniel hadn't had their dinner yet. Schedules kept not aligning, excuses kept being made, and Emma suspected they were both secretly relieved to postpone the moment when their careful flirtation would have to become something real. But the tension between them had changed, sharpened. Every morning visit felt charged, loaded with things neither of them knew how to say. I'm working late tonight, Emma mentioned one Wednesday morning. Client wants to review the final plans and the office is too distracting. You could work here, Daniel offered, and there was something careful in his voice. We close at 6, but I'm usually here until 8 or 9 doing paperwork. You could stay if you want. Emma should have said no, should have maintained boundaries, kept things light and undefined. But she was tired of should-haves and supposed toes. She was tired of being careful. Okay, she said, I'd like that. She showed up at 6:15 after the last customer had left, and Daniel had flipped the sign to closed. The shop felt different in the quiet, more intimate somehow. He'd left the string lights on over the counter, casting everything in warm gold, and had jazz playing low from the speakers. Make yourself comfortable, Daniel said, gesturing to her usual table. Coffee, something stronger. Stronger sounds good. He poured them both whiskey in mismatched mugs, and Emma laughed at the absurdity of it, drinking liquor from coffee cups like teenagers stealing their parents' booze. They worked in companionable silence for an hour, Emma reviewing renderings on her laptop, Daniel doing whatever mysterious paperwork kept him here late. The rain started around 7:30, soft at first, then building to a steady drum against the windows. Tell me about it, Daniel said suddenly, and Emma looked up confused. About what? Your sister, the wedding. He closed his laptop, gave her his full attention. You don't have to, but I get the feeling it's eating at you. Emma took a long sip of whiskey, felt it burn down her throat. She'd never told anyone the full story except Dr. Morrison. Not her other friends, not her parents, not even herself some days. But something about the late hour, the rain, the warm light, and Daniel's patient eyes, something made her want to be honest. Her name is Sophie. She's 3 years younger than me, and growing up, she was the fun one, the spontaneous one. I was always the responsible sister, the one who planned and prepared and never took risks. Emma traced patterns in the condensation on her mug. When I met David, I thought I'd finally done something right, finally found something good. He was stable, successful, ready to settle down. Everything I thought I wanted. What happened? We got engaged, set a date, booked a venue, sent out invitations. I was so busy planning the perfect wedding that I didn't notice how much time he was spending with Sophie. Emma's voice went flat. I found them together 2 weeks before the wedding, in our apartment, in our bed. Sophie crying, saying she was sorry, saying she didn't know how it happened. David saying it wasn't what it looked like, even though it was exactly what it looked like. Jesus, Emma. I called off the wedding, moved out, cut them both off. She finished her whiskey in one burning swallow. And then 6 months later, Sophie called to tell me she and David were together. For real. That they were in love, and she hoped I could be happy for them. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. Did you want to kill them? Emma laughed sharp and bitter. Every day for about 6 months. Then I just wanted to stop caring, stop feeling anything at all. She looked at him. I'm mostly there now. Mostly. But they're getting married. In January, And Sophie keeps calling, keeps sending invitations, keeps trying to, I don't know, absolve herself, I guess. Like if I show up and smile for the photos, it'll mean everything's okay. That she didn't destroy her own sister's life for a man who was never going to be faithful to anyone. You don't owe her absolution, Daniel said quietly. I know, but sometimes I wonder if I'm being petty, if I should just, no. His voice was sharp enough that Emma startled. You don't owe them anything. Not forgiveness, not attendance, not a single moment of your time or emotional energy. They made choices that hurt you, and you get to decide how you respond to that. Anyone who tells you different can fuck right off. Emma stared at him, something warm and dangerous unfurling in her chest. Thank you. For what? For being angry on my behalf. No one's really done that before. Daniel reached across the table, covered her hand with his. His palm was warm, slightly rough, and Emma felt that touch everywhere. Their loss, he said simply. You're extraordinary, Emma Hart. Anyone who can't see that is an idiot. Emma's throat closed. She should pull her hand away, should maintain distance, should remember that wanting things was how you got hurt. But his hand felt like an anchor, like maybe she didn't have to be so careful all the time, like maybe risk was worth it if it meant moments like this. Tell me about your novel, she said instead, because if she was being vulnerable, he should be too. Daniel's hand tightened on hers, then withdrew. Emma, turnabout's fair play. I spilled my tragic backstory, now it's your turn. He leaned back in his chair, ran both hands through his hair. It was called The Last Page, about a man who gives up his dreams to take care of his dying mother, and by the time she's gone, he's forgotten how to dream at all. That's why you named the shop that. Yeah, seemed fitting. Daniel's smile was painful to look at. I had a contract with a publisher, a real one, not Vanity Press. I was supposed to turn in the manuscript 2 years ago, but Mom got sick and I couldn't focus on writing when she was... He stopped, swallowed hard. I came home to Portland, took care of her, and by the time she died, I'd missed every deadline. The publisher moved on. Did you finish it? Most of it, but I can't look at it without seeing those months, without remembering what it kind of... Sometimes I think she died hating me for giving up. Daniel, no. Emma leaned forward urgently. I'm sure she didn't. She left me a letter after, told me not to let her death be an excuse to stop living. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Pretty sure running a coffee shop was not what she had in mind. You could still finish it. You could still try. What's the point? The moment's passed, the publisher's gone. I'm not who I was when I started it. Then write a different ending. Write about who you are now. Emma held his gaze. Buildings change, all the time. You renovate, you adapt, you find new purposes for old structures. Why should people be any different? Daniel looked at her like she'd said something profound, and Emma felt exposed again, raw, like she'd revealed too much. The rain was falling harder now, and somewhere distant thunder rumbled. It's late, Daniel said finally. You should go home. The rain's getting worse. Emma glanced at the window where water poured down in sheets. I don't have my car. I walked this morning. I'll drive you. You don't have to. Emma, let me drive you home. So she packed up her laptop and they left the shop together, Daniel locking up behind them. His car was an old Honda that smelled like coffee and book pages, and Emma felt strangely at ease in the passenger seat, watching Portland's lights blur through rain-streaked windows. They didn't talk during the drive. Didn't need to. The silence felt full-weighted with everything they'd said and everything they hadn't. When Daniel pulled up outside Emma's apartment building, neither of them moved to get out. Thank you, Emma said, for tonight, for listening. Thank you for trusting me with it. They were close in the small car, close enough that Emma could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could count his breaths. She thought about kissing him, wanted to kiss him with an intensity that terrified her. Daniel's gaze dropped to her mouth, and Emma's breath caught. Emma, he said, voice rough, I should tell you. But whatever he was going to say was interrupted by Emma's phone buzzing in her bag. She ignored it. It buzzed again and again. You should get that, Daniel said, pulling back, and the moment shattered. Emma fished out her phone, saw Sophie's name on the screen, and felt cold wash through her. 6 missed calls, a string of texts, all saying the same thing. Please talk to me. Please, I need to tell you something. I should go, Emma said numbly. Yeah, of course. She was halfway out of the car when Daniel caught her wrist gentle. Emma, I meant what I said. You're extraordinary. Don't let anyone make you forget that. Emma nodded, not trusting her voice, and ran through the rain to her building. She didn't look back. Didn't want to see Daniel watching her go. Didn't want to acknowledge how much she wanted to turn around and run back to the car, to that almost kiss, to the possibility of something that scared her more than anything had in 3 years. Upstairs in her apartment that always felt too empty, Emma blocked Sophie's number without reading the text and poured herself another whiskey. She didn't sleep that night. Just sat by her window watching rain turn Portland into watercolors and wondered if she was brave enough to be the person Daniel seemed to think she was. The last week of June, Emma made a decision. She would stop going to the last page, would find another coffee shop, protect her heart, maintain boundaries. It was the smart thing to do, the safe thing. She lasted 2 days. On the third morning, she walked into the shop and found it strangely quiet. Daniel was behind the counter, staring at a piece of paper, and his face was gray. Daniel. Emma approached carefully. What's wrong? He looked up, and his eyes were devastated. The loan. I applied for a business loan to buy the pharmacy space. I thought I had a good chance. I'd researched, I'd prepared. He gestured helplessly at the paper. Denied. Insufficient credit history. Emma's heart cracked. Daniel, I'm so sorry. It's fine. But his voice said it wasn't fine at all. I'll figure something else out. Maybe I can, I don't know, find an investor or something. He turned away, started making her coffee with mechanical precision, and Emma felt useless. She wanted to fix this, wanted to save him the way she saved old buildings, but she didn't know how. She was about to say something, anything, when another customer walked in. Daniel's professional mask snapped into place, and Emma collected her coffee and sat at her usual table, her mind racing. An idea was forming. Dangerous, probably stupid, definitely crossing lines she'd sworn not to cross. But Emma had spent 3 years being careful, being safe, protecting herself from every possible hurt. Maybe it was time to be brave instead. She stayed until the morning rush ended, until the shop was quiet again. Then she approached the counter, her decision made. Can I help, she asked. With the shop, with finding a new space. I'm an architect, I know buildings, I know the city. Let me help. Daniel studied her for a long moment. Why would you do that? Because I'm falling for you. Because when I imagine Portland without this place, without you, something in me breaks. Because maybe saving you is the first step to saving myself. Because good coffee shops are hard to find, Emma said again. And this time she let him see the lie. Daniel's expression softened, and Emma knew he understood everything she wasn't saying. Okay, he said quietly. Yeah, I'd like that. Emma smiled, and it felt like jumping off a cliff, like the first time she'd trusted her own design enough to build something real, like hope, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. She didn't know yet that in 6 days she would see Daniel at the bank, would watch his face crumble as they denied him, again would realize that anything she attached herself to was destined to disappear. She didn't know that fear would win, that she would retreat, that June would end with silence instead of possibility. She didn't know any of that yet, so she sat down across from Daniel, pulled out her laptop, and together they started searching for spaces that could be saved. And for a little while, Emma let herself believe that maybe she could be saved too. The last day of June ended with Emma sitting in her car outside a downtown bank, watching through tinted glass as Daniel emerged from the building with shoulders that seemed to carry more weight than when he'd gone in 30 minutes earlier. She'd followed him here. Not intentionally, she'd been passing by after a client meeting, saw his Honda parked in the loading zone, and something made her pull over, wait, watch. Maybe she wanted to see him triumph. Maybe she wanted to witness the moment when things finally went right for someone who deserved it. Instead, she watched him stop on the sidewalk, read something on his phone, and crumple like paper. Just for a second, his whole body folding inward, his face twisting into something raw and broken, before he caught himself, straightened, shoved the phone in his pocket. Emma's hand was on the door handle. She would get out, cross the street, say something comforting. They would figure this out together. But then Daniel looked up, looked around, and Emma saw his face properly. Saw the shame there, the defeat, the terrible certainty that he'd failed at something fundamental. And she recognized that expression because she'd worn it herself, standing in a wedding boutique with a dress she'd never wear, explaining to the seamstress that no, there wouldn't be any alterations needed after all. Emma understood in that crystalline moment that anything she touched turned to ash. Her engagement, her relationship with her sister. And now, this whatever fragile thing she and Daniel had been building across coffee counters and rain-soaked confessions. She couldn't save him. She could barely save herself. So Emma started her car and drove away while Daniel stood on that sidewalk small and alone, and she told herself it was for the best. Told herself that walking away now would hurt less than staying and watching everything collapse anyway. She was a liar, but at least she was a consistent one. July passed in a blur of architectural renderings and deliberately chosen alternative coffee shops. Emma tried 4 different places in 2 weeks before accepting that none of them would ever be. The last page would never have Daniel's careful hands or the way he remembered she took her coffee, extra hot, no foam. She drove past the shop twice. Once at 7 in the morning when she knew he'd be setting up, saw him through the window moving between tables, and her chest ached so badly she had to pull over and breathe through it. Once at night when the closed sign hung dark in the window, and she could pretend she was just passing through, not circling back to something she'd already decided to abandon. Her phone buzzed constantly. Sophie, relentless as ever, had apparently decided that July was the month for reconciliation. The texts came daily, hourly, sometimes each one a variation on the same theme. We need to talk, please. I made mistakes, but so did you. We're family. The wedding is in 6 months. Mom wants you there. David wants you there. I want you there. Emma deleted them unread after the first few, but she couldn't quite bring herself to block the number again. Some masochistic part of her needed to see Sophie's name pop up on her screen, needed the reminder of why loving people was dangerous, why opening your heart was just inviting someone to carve their initials into it with a rusty knife. Her warehouse project wrapped up in mid-July. The client loved it. Emma's boss mentioned a promotion, more responsibility, a corner office with windows that actually opened. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd built her careful life around. She felt nothing. You seem distant, Dr. Morrison observed during their session on the last Thursday of July. More than usual. Talk to me. Emma stared at the diplomas on the wall, the potted plant that never seemed to grow or die, the clock that ticked too loudly. I met someone. I told you about him. Daniel. The coffee shop owner, I remember. I stopped going to his shop. Why, Ty? Because I'm a coward. Because I'm terrified that if I let myself care, if I let myself hope, the universe will take him away too. Because everyone I love leaves, and I'm tired of being left. Because it was getting complicated, Emma said instead. Dr. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Emma, what are you afraid of? I'm not afraid. You're absolutely terrified. I can see it from here. Dr. Morrison leaned forward, her expression gentle but unyielding. You've spent 3 years building walls, and that was necessary. You needed time to heal. But healing doesn't mean never risking hurt again. It means learning that you can survive it. What if I can't? What if you can? Emma looked at her therapist, this woman who'd seen her at her absolute worst, who'd witnessed every ugly breakdown and middle-of-the-night panic attack. I saw him get rejected for a loan, saw his face when it happened, and all I could think was, this is how it starts. This is how I lose things, by caring about them. Or time, Dr. Morrison said carefully. This is how you find out that you're stronger than you think, that you can witness someone else's pain and not run from it. I already ran, so run back. Emma laughed, bitter and tired. It's not that simple, isn't it? But it wasn't, because Emma had spent 3 years learning that simple was dangerous, that easy was a trap, that the things you didn't protect yourself from were the things that destroyed you. August arrived with heat that made Portland shimmer like a mirage. Emma's new coffee shop was a corporate chain with aggressive air conditioning and coffee that tasted like it had been brewed in a laboratory. She hated everything about it, which felt appropriate. On a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks into her self-imposed exile from the last page, Emma's phone rang with an unknown number. Hello. Hi, is this Emma Hart? A young voice, uncertain male. Yes. This is Marcus. I work at the last page, Daniel's assistant. He didn't ask me to call you, but I found something and I thought, look, Can you come by the shop? Maybe when Daniel's not here, like after closing. Emma's heart was a fist in her throat. Is he okay? Yeah, he's fine, physically, but he's been really, Marcus stopped, started over. Just come by. Tonight, 7 o'clock, I'll be closing up. Please. Emma should have said no, should have maintained her distance, protected her carefully constructed walls. But worry overrode caution, and she heard herself say, okay, 7 o'clock. She barely made it through the workday. Spent 8 hours imagining scenarios. Daniel hurt, Daniel sick. Daniel having finally had enough of everything and done something irreversible. By the time she pulled up outside the last page at exactly 7 p.m., her hands were shaking. Marcus was waiting by the door. A kid who couldn't be older than 20 with purple hair and the kind of earnest expression that made Emma feel ancient at 29 took him. Thanks for coming, he said, ushering her inside. The shop looked the same worn tables, same string lights, same smell of coffee and possibility, but emptier somehow, without Daniel's presence filling it. What's going on? Emma asked. Is Daniel? He's fine. Well, not fine, but like alive and stuff. Marcus pulled something from behind the counter. He found this under your usual table, the one by the window. He's been keeping it in his office, and I wasn't supposed to see it, but I did, and I thought you should know. He handed Emma a small leather journal. Her journal. The one she'd been using for random sketches and ideas, the one she'd thought she'd lost at home, but must have left here that last day in June when they'd looked at spaces together, and she'd still believed in possible futures. Look at page 43, Marcus said quietly. Emma's hands trembled as she flipped through pages of architectural sketches and meeting notes until she found it. Her own handwriting from sometime in May, a moment she barely remembered writing. How do you trust again after betrayal? How do you believe in good things when every good thing you've had has turned poisonous? He says his coffee shop might close. I want to fix it for him. Want to fix him? But what if I'm the broken thing? What if I'm the poison? And below it in different ink, in handwriting that wasn't hers, you're not poison. You're scared. There's a difference, and Emma's vision blurred. He wrote this last week. I saw it on his desk. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Look, I know it's not my business, but Daniel's been a wreck since you stopped coming. He won't talk about it, but I can tell. And I just thought, I don't know what happened between you guys, but whatever it was, maybe it's fixable. I don't know if it is. Do you want it to be? Did she? Emma stared at Daniel's handwriting, at those words that saw through her defenses and refused to let her hide. She'd spent 3 years being careful, being safe, being alone. And it had kept her from getting hurt, sure. But it had also kept her from everything else. Yeah, Emma whispered. I do. Then maybe tell him that. Marcus smiled. He's here every morning at 6 to prep, just so you know. Emma didn't go at 6 a.m. She went at 5:30 when she knew Daniel would be alone, when the pre-dawn light would make everything feel less real, easier to face. She stood outside the last page for 5 full minutes, watching Daniel move around inside, setting up chairs, filling the espresso machine, lost in the routine of preparation. He looked tired, thinner. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there in June. Emma almost left, almost got back in her car and drove away and let the moment pass. But then she thought about Dr. Morrison's words, about being stronger than she thought, about running back instead of just running. She opened the door. Daniel turned at the sound of the chime, and his whole face went through about 7 emotions in 2 seconds. Surprise, hope, wariness, hurt, and finally settling on something carefully neutral. Emma. Hi. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Can we talk? He nodded slowly, gestured to a table. They sat across from each other like strangers, like all those mornings of careful flirtation had never happened, like they were starting from scratch. I'm sorry, Emma said before she lost her nerve. For disappearing. For everything. Why did you? Daniel's voice was quiet, controlled. I thought we had something. We did. We do. Emma twisted her hands in her lap. I saw you. At the bank. That day in June. I saw you come out after they denied the loan, and I saw your face, and I panicked. Why? Because everyone I care about leaves or betrays me, or both. The words came out in a rush, and I looked at you and thought, this is how it starts. This is how I let myself hope and then lose everything again. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. So you left first? Yes. Emma. He reached across the table, stopped just short of touching her hand. I can't promise I won't hurt you. I can't promise everything will work out perfectly. But I can promise that if you run every time things get hard, you'll spend your whole life running. I know. Emma's throat was tight. Marcus showed me the journal. What you wrote. Something flickered in Daniel's expression. I shouldn't have read it. That was private. No, I'm glad you did. Emma finally met his eyes. You're right. I am scared. I'm terrified, actually, but I'm more scared of never knowing what we could have been. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to try. If you're still willing to, she couldn't finish the sentence. Daniel's hand finally closed over hers, warm and solid and real. I'm willing. They sat like that for a long time, holding hands across a coffee-stained table while dawn broke over Portland, and Emma felt something in her chest unfurl. Not healing, not yet, but the beginning of it, the possibility. So what now? She asked eventually. Daniel smiled, slow and genuine. Now I make you coffee, and we start over. Slower this time maybe, but together. Together, Emma repeated, and it sounded like a promise. They didn't call it dating, didn't define it, didn't put labels on it. Just started seeing each other slowly, carefully testing the waters of whatever they were building. Walks through Washington Park on Sunday mornings, late-night texts about nothing important. Daniel lending Emma books he thought she'd like. Emma sketching ideas for his new coffee shop location, even though they both knew he couldn't afford any of them yet. It was cautious and tentative, and nothing like the whirlwind romance Emma had had with David. But it felt real in a way that relationship never had. Felt earned. In late August, Daniel showed Emma something he'd never shown anyone. His novel. The manuscript that had sat untouched for 2 years gathering dust in a desk drawer. I started working on it again, he admitted, sitting in Emma's apartment, for the first time, rain drumming against the windows. After that night, we talked. After you said that thing about buildings changing, adapting, it got me thinking. Can I read it? Emma asked. Daniel hesitated, then handed over a stack of printed pages. It's rough, really rough, but yeah, I'd like you to. Emma started reading that night after he left. She made it through 50 pages before she had to stop, had to sit with the realization that was unfurling in her chest. The main character was a woman, an architect, who'd been betrayed by someone she loved and had closed herself off from the world, who met a coffee shop owner who was also running from his past, and together they learned how to be brave again. Emma called Daniel at midnight. You wrote me into your novel, she said when he answered, voice rough with sleep. Silence on the other end. Then, yeah, I did. When did you start? June. After that night, we talked about Sophie and David. A pause. You inspired me. First time I've been inspired to write in 2 years. I hope that's okay. Emma's hands were shaking. Daniel, I'm not that person. The woman in your book, and she's brave and strong, and she knows how to heal. I don't know any of that. You are that person. You just can't see it yet. You made her too perfect, too... Emma. Daniel's voice was gentle. It's fiction. But the core of her, the way she sees the world, the way she's trying so hard to protect herself, but still has this huge capacity for love, that's all you. That's what I see when I look at you. Emma couldn't speak, couldn't breathe around the sudden tightness in her chest. I'm sorry, Daniel said into the silence. I should have asked before I... No, Emma found her voice. Don't apologize. Can we talk about this tomorrow? Of course. They hung up and Emma stared at the manuscript pages scattered across her coffee table, saw herself reflected in ink and paper, saw herself through Daniel's eyes, flawed but trying, damaged but not broken, scared but learning to be brave. She read until dawn, until she reached the last written page where the story cut off mid-scene and realized Daniel had stopped writing at the exact moment she'd disappeared from his life. The next day, Emma went to the last page and found Daniel behind the counter looking anxious. I'm not mad, she said before he could speak. About the book, I'm not mad. Relief flooded his face. You're sure? I'm sure, but I need you to understand something. Emma leaned against the counter, choosing her words carefully. I don't know how to be that person yet. The one in your story who knows how to heal, how to forgive. I'm still so angry, Daniel. At Sophie, at David, at myself. And I don't know if I'll ever not be angry. You don't have to be anything you're not, Daniel said quietly. I wrote fiction, not a prescription. You get to heal however you need to heal. What if I never do? Then you never do. And he stopped reconsidered. I'll still be here. If you want me to be. Emma looked at him. This man who saw her at her worst and still chose to write her as someone worth knowing and felt something crack open in her chest. Not breaking. Opening. I want you to be, she whispered. Daniel came around the counter, and for the first time since that almost kiss in June, they stood close enough to touch, without a table between them. Emma could feel the heat of him, could count the rapid pulse in his throat, could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Emma, he said, and her name in his mouth sounded like a question. She answered it by kissing him. It wasn't dramatic, wasn't passionate or overwhelming. It was soft and tentative and tasted like coffee and promise. It was the first kiss Emma had let herself have in 3 years, and it felt like coming up for air after drowning. When they pulled apart, Daniel was smiling. So we're doing this. We're doing this, Emma confirmed. Whatever this is. Maybe we could call it dating, just so I know where we stand. Emma laughed, surprised by the lightness in her chest. Okay, we're dating. Cool. Daniel's smile was brilliant boyish. Want to go on an actual date? Like dinner, movie, normal people stuff. I'd like that. They had their first official date that weekend. Dinner at a Thai place in Southeast, a terrible action movie. They both mocked affectionately, walking along the waterfront as the sun set over the Willamette River. It was ordinary and perfect, and for the first time in years, Emma let herself just exist in a moment without planning 17 steps ahead or armoring herself against inevitable disappointment. They were walking back to Emma's car when Daniel's phone rang. He glanced at it, and Emma saw his expression shudder. Sorry, I have to. He stepped away, answered. Hello, yes. This is Daniel Cooper. Emma couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Daniel's shoulders tense, watched him run a hand through his hair in the way he did when he was stressed. I see, he said finally. Yes, thank you for letting me know. He hung up, stood still for a moment staring at the river, then turned back to Emma with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Everything okay, she asked. Yeah, he shook his head. The building owner found a buyer. The last page has to be out by October 1st. Emma's stomach dropped. Daniel. It's fine, I knew it was coming. I'll figure something out. But his voice said he had no idea what that something would be. Emma took his hand, squeezed. We'll figure something out, together. Yeah, Daniel said, but he sounded like he didn't believe it. They drove back to Emma's place in silence, and when Daniel dropped her off, their goodnight kiss tasted like goodbye. September came in with unusual warmth and the kind of bright blue skies that felt like a taunt. Emma threw herself into helping Daniel search for new locations, spent her lunch breaks scouring real estate listings, her evenings driving around Portland, looking for spaces that might work. Everything was either too expensive, too small, or too far from Daniel's current customer base. Emma felt useless, felt like she was watching someone drown and could only offer them a paper cup to bail water. On a Wednesday afternoon, 3 weeks into September, Emma's doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone, and when she checked the peephole, her whole body went cold. Sophie stood in the hallway looking nervous and determined in equal measure. Emma considered not answering, considered pretending she wasn't home. But something, curiosity, anger, the tiniest sliver of the person she used to be before everything broke, made her open the door. Hi, Sophie said, and she had the audacity to smile. I was in the neighborhood and thought, can we talk? No, Sito. Emma started to close the door. Please, Sophie's hand shot out, stopping it. Emma, please, 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. You don't get to ask me for anything. But Emma didn't close the door. I know I don't. But I need to say this, and if you want me to leave after, I will. Sophie's eyes were bright with tears. Can I come in? Or we could talk out here if you prefer. Against every instinct, every wall she'd built, Emma stepped aside. 5 minutes. Sophie walked into Emma's apartment like she was treading through a minefield. She'd never been here before. This place Emma had moved to after leaving the apartment she'd shared with David. this space that was hers alone. Nice place, Sophie offered. 4 minutes. Sophie flinched. Right, okay. She took a breath. I'm not here to ask you to come to the wedding. I mean, I want you to, but I know you won't. And I get it. I get why. Do you, Emma's voice was sharp as glass. Do you really understand what you did to me? I was jealous. The words came out in a rush like Sophie had been holding them for 3 years and they'd finally broken free. Of you. You were always the good one, the responsible one. Mom and Dad were always so proud of you. And David? David was supposed to be mine. I met him first, did you know that? At a party before he met you? But he saw you walk in and forgot I existed. Emma stared at her sister. So you slept with my fiancé because you were jealous? No, yes, I don't know. Sophie sank onto the couch uninvited. I never meant for it to happen. It started as just, we were friends. He'd complain about wedding stress, I'd listen. And then one night he was drunk and upset because you two had fought about something and we kissed. And it was supposed to be once just a mistake, but then it kept happening. And I kept telling myself I'd stop. And then you found us and you kept him. Emma's voice was dead. You kept him and you're marrying him and you have the nerve to show up here and tell me it was because you were jealous. I'm not trying to justify it. I'm not. Sophie wiped at her eyes. I'm trying to explain. I was jealous and insecure and I made the worst choice of my life because I wanted something that was yours. And now I'm stuck, Emma. I'm stuck in this relationship with a man I don't even love because I'm too afraid to admit I ruined my life for nothing. Emma felt like she'd been punched. What? I don't love him. Sophie laughed wet and bitter. I maybe never did. I loved the idea of taking something from you, of proving I could have what you had. And now I'm 6 months from marrying him, and I'm terrified. But if I call it off, what does that say about me? That I destroyed my relationship with my sister for a man I didn't even want. You're asking me to feel sorry for you. Emma couldn't believe it. You cheated with my fiancé, you're marrying him, and now you want me to feel sorry for you because you're having second thoughts. No, I'm not asking for anything. Sophie stood, wiped her face. I just needed you to know I'm a terrible person. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'm sorry and I'm not happy, and maybe that's my punishment. Your punishment, Emma's voice rose. Your punishment is an expensive wedding in a nice house and a man who clearly has no problem cheating. My punishment is trust issues in therapy and 3 years of rebuilding myself from nothing. We are not the same. I know. Get out. Emma pointed at the door. Get out of my apartment. Sophie moved toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, I hope you find someone good. Someone who deserves you. Someone who won't, her voice broke. Someone who won't hurt you the way I did. Then she was gone, and Emma stood alone in her apartment, shaking with an anger so profound she thought it might consume her from the inside out. But underneath the anger was something else, something that felt uncomfortably like pity. Because Sophie was right. She was stuck. Stuck in a relationship built on betrayal. Stuck in a lie she'd told herself for so long she couldn't see a way out. And Emma, for all her damage and trust issues and carefully constructed walls, Emma was free. She picked up her phone and called Daniel. Hey, he answered, and even that one word sounded tired. What's up? Sophie just came by. What, are you okay? I don't know. Emma must sank onto the couch Sophie had just vacated. She told me she doesn't love David, that she never did, that the whole thing was just jealousy. Daniel was quiet for a moment. How do you feel about that? I don't know, Emma repeated. Angry, said weirdly vindicated. But also I feel sorry for her, Daniel. And I don't want to feel sorry for her. I want to just be angry. You can be both. Feelings aren't at either or. When did you get so wise? It's in chapter 7 of my novel. You haven't gotten there yet. She could hear the smile in his voice. Do you want me to come over? Emma did. Desperately. But she also needed to sit with this, needed to process Sophie's confession without Daniel's steadying presence making everything easier. No, I'm okay. I just needed to hear your voice. Well, you've got it. I'm here whenever you need me. They talked for another hour about nothing and everything until Emma felt steady again, until the sharp edges of Sophie's visit had dulled into something manageable. "I should let you go," Emma said finally. "It's late." "Emma, thank you for calling me, for trusting me with this." "Always," she said, and meant it. After they hung up, Emma sat in the dark of her apartment and thought about Sophie's trapped, miserable life. Thought about David, who'd traded one Hart sister for another and would probably cheat on Sophie eventually too. Thought about the 3 years she'd spent convinced she was fundamentally unlovable when really she just loved the wrong people. She thought about Daniel, who saw her clearly and chose her anyway, who wrote her into his stories as someone brave even when she didn't feel brave at all. And Emma realized something. She didn't need Sophie's apology, didn't need her sister's confession or her pity or her punishment. She'd already moved on, had already started building something new. She texted Dr. Morrison, made a breakthrough. "Sophie visited. I'll tell you at our next session. But I think I'm actually healing." The response came immediately. "Proud of you." For the first time in 3 years, Emma was proud of herself too. October arrived with the kind of crisp air that smelled like wood smoke and possibility. Daniel had 3 weeks left at the last page before he had to close for good, and Emma still hadn't found him a viable new location. She was working late at the office one Thursday evening when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Hello, Emma Hart." A woman's voice, professional, unfamiliar. "Yes, this is Jennifer Park from the Portland Architects Guild. We're hosting an exhibition next week showcasing local sustainable design projects, and your warehouse conversion was recommended by several members. Would you be interested in displaying your work?" Emma sat up straighter. Yes, absolutely. When is it?" "Next Saturday, October 14th, 6 to 9 p.m. at the Pearl District Gallery." They discussed logistics, what Emma would need to bring, who else would be exhibiting. Emma hung up feeling energized for the first time in weeks. This was good. This was her work being recognized, her careful rebuilding paying off. She texted Daniel. "Something good happened. Tell you tomorrow." His response was immediate. "Can't wait." The exhibition was everything Emma had hoped for. Well attended, well curated, with her warehouse conversion displayed prominently alongside photos of the before and after transformation. She wore her favorite dress, dark green, simple but elegant, and felt like maybe she'd finally stepped back into the person she used to be before everything fell apart. She was talking to another architect about sustainable materials when she saw him. Daniel, standing across the gallery staring at her display, wearing slacks and a button-down shirt she'd never seen before. He looked different here outside the coffee shop, polished and present and breathtakingly handsome. Their eyes met across the room and Emma's breath caught. She excused herself from the conversation and made her way over, weaving through clusters of people until she stood beside him. "You came," she said. "You think I'd miss this?" Daniel gestured at the photos on the wall. "Emma, this is incredible. You're incredible. I didn't know you were coming. How did you even—" "Marcus saw the posting on Instagram. I wanted to surprise you." He turned to face her fully. "I'm so proud of you." Emma felt herself flush. "It's just a display. It's not just anything. It's your work, your vision, your talent making something beautiful out of something broken." Daniel's voice dropped. "Kind of like what you've done for yourself." Before Emma could respond, someone touched her shoulder. She turned, expecting another architect, and froze. David stood there looking exactly the same, handsome in that generic way, confident, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her rent. And beside him, clinging to his arm, was Sophie. "Emma," David said, and he had the audacity to smile. "I heard you'd be here. Had to come see my ex-fiancé's big moment." Emma's mind went blank. No words, no thoughts, just static and the sudden urge to be anywhere else. But then Daniel's hand found the small of her back, steady and grounding, and she remembered how to breathe. "David," she managed. "Sophie, what are you doing here?" "I'm a member of the guild," David said easily. "Invested in a few architectural projects around the city. Sustainable development." He glanced at Emma's display. "Your work is lovely, very safe." The condescension in his tone was subtle but unmistakable, and Emma felt herself shrinking, reverting to the woman she'd been 3 years ago when his opinion mattered. "Emma's work isn't safe," Daniel said, and his voice had gone cold in a way Emma had never heard. "It's transformative, but I guess you wouldn't recognize transformation if it hit you in the face." David's smile didn't waver. And you are Daniel Cooper, Emma's boyfriend. The word sent a thrill through Emma's chest. They'd been dating for 2 months, but he'd never used that label before. Never claimed her so publicly, so definitively. David's eyes narrowed slightly. Boyfriend? Well, good for you, Emma. Moving on and all that. We're very happy, Sophie said suddenly, and her voice was too bright, too forced. She looked at Emma with something pleading in her eyes. Aren't we, David? Ecstatic, David confirmed, but he was looking at Emma with an expression she couldn't read. Listen, Emma, I'm glad we ran into you. I was hoping we could talk sometime. About business. Business, Emma repeated. I'm expanding my investment portfolio, looking for architects to partner with on some projects. He handed her a business card. Give me a call. We could grab coffee, discuss opportunities. Emma stared at the card like it was a snake. I don't think about it, David interrupted. No pressure. Just old friends helping each other out. He steered Sophie away before Emma could respond, and she watched them disappear into the crowd, feeling like she'd been in a car crash. Boyfriend, she said, finally turning to Daniel. He looked almost embarrassed. Sorry, I should have asked first. It just came out. That guy made me. I like it. Emma interrupted. The label, I like it. Daniel's expression softened. Yeah. They stood close in the middle of the gallery, surrounded by people and noise, and Emma felt something shift between them, something solidifying, becoming real. What did he mean about opportunities? Daniel asked. Emma looked at the business card still clutched in her hand. David Chen Real Estate Investment, and below that a list of properties he owned, including Emma's heart stopped, including 1247 Morrison Street, the old pharmacy she'd found for Daniel back in June, the perfect space with the big windows and the exposed brick. Emma, Daniel was watching her face. What is it? The pharmacy, she said numbly. The one I showed you. David owns it, she. What? He owns the building. He's the landlord I'd need to negotiate with if you wanted to move the last page there. Understanding dawned on Daniel's face. So when he said we should talk about business, he meant he knows what I want, and he's dangling it in front of me. They looked at each other, and Emma saw her own conflict reflected in Daniel's eyes. This was what he needed, a chance at a new location, a lifeline for his coffee shop. But accepting help from David felt like swallowing poison. I don't want you to do this, Daniel said quietly. I don't want you to have to talk to him, to see him, to. What if it's the only way? Then I'll find another way. Daniel took her hands. Emma, your peace of mind is worth more than my coffee shop. But no buts, I mean it. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me. Emma looked at their joined hands, at this man who kept choosing her, who kept proving that not everyone would betray her for their own gain. And she made a decision. Let me think about it, she said. Just let me think. They stayed at the exhibition another hour, talking to other architects, celebrating Emma's work. But her mind was elsewhere, turning over possibilities, weighing costs. When they finally left, Daniel walked her to her car, and they stood in the autumn night, Portland's lights glittering around them. Today was good, Emma said, until it wasn't. Today was great. David showing up doesn't change that. Daniel brushed a strand of hair from her face. You're amazing, Emma Hart, and I'm so glad I get to be your boyfriend. She smiled despite everything. Say it again. Boyfriend. Yeah, I like how it sounds. Boyfriend, Daniel repeated, grinning. Boyfriend, boyfriend, boyfriend. Emma laughed, and it felt like light breaking through clouds. She kissed him there, in the parking lot, long and deep, and tried to memorize this moment, this feeling of being chosen, being valued, being seen. When they pulled apart, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. Whatever you decide about David, about the space, I support you. No pressure. I know. But as Emma drove home that night, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Couldn't stop running calculations in her head. What would it cost her to talk to David? What would it cost Daniel if she didn't? Emma didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, turning the problem over and over until it felt like her brain would short circuit. At dawn, she gave up on sleep and called Dr. Morrison's emergency line. I'm sorry to bother you, Emma said, when her therapist answered, voice rough with sleep. But I need advice. She explained the situation, David, the building, Daniel's coffee shop. Dr. Morrison listened without interrupting, and when Emma finished, there was a long pause. What do you want to do? Dr. Morrison asked finally. I want to fix it. I want to save Daniel's shop. Why, Charlotte? Because he deserves it. Because I can help. And what does it cost you? Emma was quiet. Having to see David again. Having to ask him for something. Her voice cracked. Having to face the man who destroyed me and pretend I'm okay. Are you okay? Mostly. Then maybe this is your chance to prove it. Not to David, not to Sophie, but to yourself. Dr. Morrison's voice was gentle. You don't owe David anything. But you don't owe him your continued fear either. If you want to do this, do it for the right reasons. Not to save Daniel, but because you're strong enough to face your past without it breaking you. What if it does break me? Then you'll rebuild, like you did before, like you've been doing all along. They talked for another 30 minutes, and by the time Emma hung up, the sun was fully risen, and she knew what she had to do. She texted Daniel, "Can we talk today?" His response, always. Come by the shop. The last page was quiet when Emma arrived at 10 a.m., the mid-morning lull between the rush hours. Daniel was behind the counter, and his face lit up when she walked in, though she could see the worry underneath. Hey, he said. Coffee. Just you. Emma leaned against the counter. I want to talk to David. Daniel's expression shuddered. Emma. Not for you, for me. She rushed on before he could interrupt. I need to do this. I need to prove to myself that I can stand in front of him and not fall apart. That I'm stronger than what he did to me. You don't have to prove anything. I do, though. To myself. I've spent 3 years running from anything that reminded me of that pain, and I'm tired of running. If talking to David means I can help you and prove something to myself at the same time, then it's worth it. Daniel studied her for a long moment. You're sure, Sarah? I'm sure. Then I'm coming with you. Daniel, non-negotiable. You want to face him, fine, but you're not doing it alone. Emma felt warmth spread through her chest. Okay, together. They called David that afternoon. He answered on the second ring, sounding pleased and unsurprised. Emma, I was hoping you'd call. I want to discuss the Morrison Street property. When can we meet? How about Monday, my office say 2 p.m.? Emma agreed, hung up, and immediately felt like she might throw up. Hey, Daniel said, pulling her close. You've got this, and I've got you. Emma leaned into him, let his steady heartbeat ground her. Together, she repeated. Together, he confirmed. Monday came too fast. Emma changed outfits 3 times before settling on a black pantsuit that made her feel professional and armored. Daniel picked her up at 1:30, and they drove to David's office in silence. Emma's hands clenched in her lap. David's office was in one of those glass towers downtown, all modern minimalism and expensive views. His assistant, young pretty, the kind of girl David would absolutely sleep with, given half a chance, led them to a conference room where David was waiting, looking relaxed and confident. Emma. He stood, offered his hand. Emma didn't take it. And Daniel, right? Please sit. They sat across the table from him, and Emma felt like she was negotiating a hostage situation rather than a business deal. So, David said, opening a folder, Morrison Street, beautiful property, great location. I'm assuming you're interested for Mr. Cooper's coffee shop. Yes, Emma said, proud that her voice didn't shake. I'd be happy to lease it to you, but I have some conditions. Of course he did. What kind of conditions? David leaned back, fingers steepled. I want you at the wedding, Emma. You and Daniel both. Smiling civil, showing everyone that we're all adults who've moved on. I want photos of us together, proof that there's no bad blood. Emma's stomach turned. You want to use me for what social proof to make yourself look better? I want Sophie to be happy on her wedding day, and she won't be happy if she thinks you hate her. David's expression was calculating. Do this for me, and the Morrison Street property is yours at below market rate. 5-year lease option to buy. I'll even waive the first month's rent. Emma looked at Daniel, who was staring at David with barely contained fury. You're blackmailing her, Daniel said flatly. I'm offering a business arrangement. Emma gets what she wants, I get what I want. Everyone wins. Except Emma has to pretend the man who cheated on her with her sister is a good person. David shrugged. I'm not asking her to lie, just to be civil. It's not that much to ask. It's everything to ask, Daniel said, standing. Come on, Emma, we're leaving. But Emma stayed seated. Because as much as she hated this, as much as she wanted to walk away and never see David's smug face again, this was Daniel's shop, Daniel's dream. And she told herself she was doing this to prove she was strong enough. Time to prove it. One photo, she said. At the reception, I'll stand with you and Sophie for one photo and I'll smile. But I'm not staying for the ceremony and I'm not pretending we're friends. One photo and you give Daniel the lease at the rate you quoted. David considered. Done. I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers. I want them before the wedding. Smart girl. You'll have them by Christmas. Emma stood and Daniel immediately took her hand. We're done here. They made it to the elevator before Emma started shaking. Made it to the parking garage before the tears came. Daniel pulled her into his arms and the cold concrete space held her while she cried out 3 years of anger and hurt and frustrated helplessness. You didn't have to do that, he said when she'd calmed down. Yes, I did. Emma pulled back and wiped her face. Not just for you, for me, to prove I could sit across from him and not fall apart. You're the bravest person I know. I don't feel brave. That's what makes it brave. They drove back to Emma's apartment and Daniel stayed with her the rest of the day, just being present while Emma processed what she'd agreed to. They didn't talk much, just sat together, and it was enough. That evening, as the sun set and Portland's lights began to glow, Daniel pulled Emma close on her couch. Tell me something, he said. Something true. Emma thought about it. I'm still angry. At David, at Sophie, at myself for letting them hurt me. But I'm also grateful. Grateful. If they hadn't betrayed me, I never would have moved. Never would have found the last page. Never would have met you. She looked up at him. And as much as it hurt, as much as I wish it had happened differently, I can't regret the path that led me here. Daniel kissed her forehead. That's the most hopeful thing I've heard you say. I'm trying to believe in good things again. Am I a good thing? Emma smiled. You're the best thing. They stayed like that until late, wrapped in each other, and Emma felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she was going to be okay. November bled into December with the kind of gray drizzle that made Portland feel like it existed underwater. Emma had the lease documents from David's lawyer sitting on her kitchen table, unsigned, accusing her every time she walked past. She hadn't told Daniel yet, hadn't told him about the wedding condition, about the photo David wanted, about the price she'd agreed to pay for Morrison Street. She told herself she was waiting for the right moment, but really she was just being a coward. You're quiet, Daniel said one evening as they sat in his apartment, a small one-bedroom above a bookstore cluttered with manuscript pages and coffee-stained mugs. The last page had closed 3 weeks ago, the space now empty, waiting for its next incarnation. Daniel had moved all the important things here, the espresso machine, the string lights, the sign that read, the last page in fading gold letters. Just thinking, Emma said, curled against his side on a couch that had seen better days. About how I'm lying to you by omission. About how I agreed to something I knew you'd hate because I convinced myself I was doing it for you when really I'm doing it to prove something to myself. About how I'm terrified you'll leave when you find out. About the holidays, she said instead. My parents want me to come home for Christmas. It wasn't a complete lie. Her parents had called, had asked about the wedding, had tried to play mediator between their daughters like they'd been doing for 3 years. Emma had told them she wasn't going to the wedding, and her mother had sighed that particular sigh that meant, why can't you just forgive and forget? Are you going? Daniel asked, playing with her hair absently. No, I told them I had plans. Did you have plans? Emma looked up at him. I was hoping to spend it with you, if that's okay. Daniel's smile was soft, genuine. That's more than okay. That's perfect. They stayed like that for a while, comfortable in the silence until Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and Emma felt his whole body tense. What is it? She asked. Email from the publisher, the one who had my original contract. He sat up, scrolling. They want to know if I'm still working on the novel, if I'd be interested in resubmitting. Emma's heart leaped. Daniel, that's amazing. It's terrifying. He ran a hand through his hair. What if it's not good enough? What if I've lost whatever made them interested in the first place? You haven't. Your writing is beautiful. Emma took his hand. You should do it. You should finish and send it in. I don't know if I can. Every time I try to work on the ending, I freeze up, like I'm afraid of. He stopped, shook his head. Afraid of what? Afraid of hoping, afraid of wanting something that much again. Daniel looked at her, and his eyes were vulnerable in a way that made Emma's chest ache. The last time I let myself really want something, really work toward it, my mom got sick and everything fell apart. What if the same thing happens now? Emma understood that fear intimately. Then you pick up the pieces again, like you did before, which I am. What if I can't? Then I'll help you. She kissed him softly. That's what we do, right? Help each other pick up the pieces. Daniel pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. I don't deserve you. Yes, you do. We both deserve good things. Emma meant it even as guilt churned in her stomach about the secret she was keeping. The second week of December, Sophie called. Emma almost didn't answer, but something masochistic curiosity maybe made her pick up. Hi, Sophie said, sounding surprised Emma had actually answered. I wasn't sure you'd. What do you want? Emma cut her off. I wanted to thank you. David told me what you did, about the lease, about agreeing to the photo. Sophie's voice was quiet. You didn't have to do that. I didn't do it for you. I know, but still, thank you. Emma closed her eyes, leaned against her kitchen counter. Are you happy, Sophie? Really happy? Silence on the other end. Then does it matter? I guess not. And Emma realized it didn't. Sophie's happiness or misery was no longer her concern, no longer something she needed to monitor or care about. The wedding is January 6th, right? Right, 2 p.m. At the I don't need the details. I'll be there for the reception, for the photo. That's it. Emma. I'm not doing this for you, Emma repeated. I'm doing it so I can move on, so I can prove to myself that you and David don't have power over me anymore. I understand. I hope you do. Emma took a breath. I hope you're happy, Sophie, I really do. But I also hope I never have to talk to you again after January. She hung up before Sophie could respond and felt lighter for it. Daniel was working late on his novel one Friday evening in mid-December when Emma let herself into his apartment with the key he'd given her last month. She found him at his desk, surrounded by crumpled paper and empty coffee cups, staring at his laptop screen with the kind of intensity that meant he was either having a breakthrough or a breakdown. Hey, she said softly. How's it going? I finished it. Daniel looked up and his eyes were red-rimmed but bright. The novel, I finished it. Daniel, Emma crossed the room, wrapped her arms around him from behind. That's incredible. I wrote the ending 3 times, deleted it twice, but I think this one is right. He gestured at the screen. Do you want to read it? Are you sure? I'm sure. So Emma read while Daniel paced, nervous energy radiating off him. The ending was beautiful and heartbreaking and hopeful all at once, the main character choosing to risk love, even knowing it might hurt, choosing to believe in possibility rather than living in fear. When she finished, Emma was crying. It's perfect, she whispered. Daniel, it's so perfect. You think so? He looked young and uncertain, and Emma wanted to protect him from every rejection, every disappointment, every moment of doubt. I know so. Send it to the publisher. I will. He pulled her up from the chair, kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Thank you for believing in me, for making me believe in myself. Emma kissed him back, tried to ignore the voice in her head saying, you're lying to him. You're keeping secrets. You're going to hurt him, just like everyone else in his life has hurt him. That night, they made love in Daniel's bed for the first time, slow and careful and achingly tender. And afterward, wrapped in his arms, Emma told herself she would tell him about the wedding. Tomorrow. She would tell him tomorrow. But tomorrow came and went, and Emma stayed silent. December 20th arrived cold and clear, one of those winter days where everything looks sharp and crystalline. Emma was at home attempting to sketch ideas for her next project when her doorbell rang. Daniel stood in the hallway and his face was wrong, closed off, hurt, angry. We need to talk, he said. Emma's stomach dropped. Okay, come in. He walked past her into the apartment, and Emma saw he was holding papers, the lease documents. The ones she'd left on her kitchen table, the ones she'd been meaning to hide. I came by to surprise you, Daniel said, his voice carefully controlled. Thought we could celebrate me submitting the novel. I used my spare key, and I saw these. He set the papers on her coffee table. Care to explain? Emma's mouth went dry. Daniel, you agreed to go to the wedding, Sophie's wedding, to David and Sophie's wedding, and you didn't tell me. He laughed sharp and bitter. Were you ever going to tell me? Yes, I was just what, waiting until it was too late for me to have an opinion? Waiting until you'd already sacrificed yourself for something I never asked you to do. It's not a sacrifice. Bullshit. Daniel's voice rose. You hate them. You have every right to hate them. And you're going to stand there and smile for photos like everything's okay because you think you need to do this for me. I'm doing it for both of us, Emma shot back. For your coffee shop, for your future. I don't want a future built on you hurting yourself. Daniel ran both hands through his hair, paced her small living room like a caged thing. Don't you get it? I would rather lose the shop, lose everything than watch you put yourself through that. It's my choice. Is it, or are you doing this because you still think you need to prove you're worthy of love, that you need to earn your place in my life by fixing all my problems? Emma flinched like he'd slapped her. That's not, isn't it? Daniel stopped pacing, looked at her with eyes that saw too much. Emma, I love you. I've loved you since that first day you walked into my shop looking lost and determined at the same time. And I don't need you to be perfect or strong or self-sacrificing. I just need you to trust me enough to tell me the truth. Emma's breath caught. You love me. Of course I love you. How could I not? Daniel's voice cracked. But that's not the point. The point is, you made a massive decision that affects both of us, and you didn't talk to me. You didn't trust me enough to let me in. I was trying to protect you. I don't need protection. I need a partner. Someone who trusts me with the hard stuff, not just the easy parts. He picked up the lease documents. I can't accept this, any of it. Not if it means you have to see them again. But the Morrison Strad property, I'll find something else, or I won't. Maybe the coffee shop is done. Maybe it's time for something new. Daniel set the papers back down. But I can't build something new on your pain, Emma. I won't. They stood in her living room, the December light cold through the windows, and Emma felt everything she'd been holding together start to crack. I'm scared, she admitted finally, voice small. I'm so scared, Daniel, of losing you, of messing this up, of not being enough. You're scared of the wrong things. Daniel crossed to her, took her face in his hands. I'm not David. I'm not going to cheat on you with your sister. I'm not going to leave you for someone else. But I can't, his voice broke. I can't be with someone who doesn't trust me, who keeps making decisions for both of us without asking what I want. Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. What do you want? I want you, just you, not some version of you that thinks she has to be perfect or self-sacrificing. Just the real you, messy and scared and still healing. Daniel's thumbs wiped at her tears. But I need you to trust me with that. With all of it. I'm sorry, Emma whispered. I should have told you. Should have asked. Yeah, you should have. He kissed her forehead, gentle despite everything. I need some time to think, to figure out if this is something we can work through. Daniel, please. I'm not leaving you. I need space, just for a few days. He stepped back and Emma felt the distance between them like a physical wound. I love you. But love isn't enough if we don't have trust. Then he was gone and Emma stood alone in her apartment, the December light turning everything to ice. Emma didn't eat for 2 days. Didn't sleep. Just sat by her window watching Portland move through its rhythms, rain and brief sun, people hurrying past with shopping bags and holiday cheer, while her world fell apart in slow motion. On the 3rd day, she called Dr. Morrison. I ruined it, Emma said when her therapist answered. I kept secrets and made decisions for both of us, and now he's pulling away and I don't know how to fix it. Do you want to fix it? Dr. Morrison asked. Or do you want to run? Emma was quiet, because the truth was, part of her did want to run, wanted to retreat into the safety of being alone, of not having to risk this kind of hurt. But a bigger part, the part that Daniel had helped her find, wanted to stay. Wanted to fight for this, for him, for them. I want to fix it, she said finally. Then you need to do something you've been avoiding for 3 years. What's that? Be vulnerable without knowing how it ends. Trust without guarantees. Love without armor. Dr. Morrison's voice was gentle. Emma, you've been so focused on protecting yourself from another betrayal that you've built walls that keep out the good things too. Daniel is right, he's not David, but you won't be able to fully believe that until you let yourself be scared and do it anyway. What if I try and it's too late? What if you don't try and spend the rest of your life wondering? That night, Emma made a decision. She called David. I'm backing out, she said when he answered. The wedding photo, the whole deal. I can't do it. Emma, keep the Morrison Street property. Rent it to someone else. I don't care. She took a breath. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not letting you dictate the terms of my life. I don't owe you civility. I don't owe Sophie forgiveness. And I don't owe anyone my presence at a wedding that celebrates something built on my pain. You'll lose the lease. I already told you. I don't care. Emma felt lighter with every word. You can't blackmail me anymore, David. You don't have power over me. Neither of you do. She hung up and for the first time in 3 years felt free. Then she drove to Daniel's apartment. It was nearly midnight, snow starting to fall in soft flurries, and she didn't let herself overthink it. Just knocked on his door and waited, heart hammering. Daniel answered in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, hair disheveled, eyes widening when he saw her. Emma, I called off the deal, she said in a rush, with David. I told him to keep the property, that I wasn't going to the wedding, that I didn't care about the lease anymore. Daniel stared at her. Why? Because you were right about all of it. I was trying to fix your problems to avoid dealing with my own. I was making decisions for both of us because I was scared that if I asked what you wanted, you might leave. Emma stepped closer. And I was using the lease as an excuse to see David again, to prove something to myself when really I was just picking at old wounds instead of letting them heal. Emma, I'm scared, she continued, words tumbling out. I'm scared of trusting you and getting hurt. I'm scared of letting you see all my broken pieces and having you decide I'm too damaged to love. I'm scared of being happy because every time I've been happy before, it's been ripped away. But I'm more scared of losing you because I was too much of a coward, to be honest. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, and Emma's heart was a drumbeat in her ears. Come here, he said finally, and pulled her inside. They stood in his small entryway, snow melting on Emma's coat, and Daniel cupped her face in his hands. You're not too damaged, he said quietly. You're healing. There's a difference. And I don't need you to have all the answers or be perfectly brave all the time. I just need you to let me in, to trust me enough to be scared with me instead of alone. I'm sorry, Emma whispered, for not trusting you, for making decisions without you, for, I know. Daniel kissed her soft and forgiving. I'm sorry too, for walking away instead of fighting, for giving you space when maybe what you needed was for me to stay. I did need space, to figure out what I actually wanted instead of what I thought I should want. And what do you want? Emma looked at him, this man who'd seen her at her wand and loved her anyway, who pushed her to be braver while accepting her exactly as she was. You, us, a future where we figure things out together instead of separately. I can work with that. Daniel smiled, and it was like sunrise. For the record, I don't care about Morrison Street. I don't care about this coffee shop. I care about you, about us. Everything else is just details. What will you do about the shop? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. He pulled her closer. Together. They stood like that for a while, wrapped in each other, letting the tension of the past few days drain away. Then Daniel led her to the couch and they sat tangled together while snow fell outside. Can I show you something? Daniel asked after a while. Always. He pulled out his laptop, opened a document. The publisher responded. They want the novel. They're offering a new contract. Emma's breath caught. Daniel. I haven't signed yet. Wanted to talk to you first. He looked at her. It's not a lot of money, but it's enough to live on for a while. Enough to maybe take some time, figure out what I actually want to do instead of just running a coffee shop, because it was the safe choice. What do you want to do? Write, teach, maybe. I've been thinking about running writing workshops. Daniel smiled. Small groups helping people tell their stories. Using the coffee shop space for something new. That sounds perfect. Yeah, he looked almost shy. I was thinking if you wanted, you could help me design the space. Make it work for workshops and readings. Partner with me on something new. Emma felt warmth spread through her chest. Are you asking me to work with you? I'm asking you to build something with me. Not just a business, but, he gestured helplessly, a life, a future, all of it. Yes, Emma said without hesitation. Yes to all of it. They kissed there on his worn couch, and it felt like a beginning. Like every ending they'd survived had led them here to this moment to each other. December 28th. Emma went to see Sophie one last time. They met at a coffee shop, not the last page, which felt sacred to Emma and Daniel, and sat across from each other like strangers. I'm not coming to the wedding, Emma said without preamble. I'm not doing the photo. I'm not pretending. We're okay. I'm done. Sophie nodded slowly. I understand. I don't think you do. Emma leaned forward. I don't hate you anymore, Sophie. I don't think about you enough to hate you. You're someone I used to know. Someone who hurt me. And I've decided that's all you get to be. Emma, I'm not saying this to be cruel. I'm saying it because I need you to understand that I'm moving on. Really moving on. Not in the fake way where I pretend everything's fine, but in the real way where I build a life that has nothing to do with you or David. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. I really am sorry for everything. I know, but sorry doesn't fix what you broke. Emma softened slightly. I hope you're happy, Sophie. I hope David makes you happy, even though I doubt he will. But mostly I hope you figure out who you are when you're not comparing yourself to me. And what if I never do? Then that's your problem, not mine. Emma stood. Goodbye, Sophie. Will I ever see you again? Emma considered. Maybe. In 10 years at a family thing. We'll be polite strangers, but we're never going to be sisters again. I can't trust you enough for that. She left before Sophie could respond and felt no guilt. Only relief. New Year's Eve arrived with fresh snow and the kind of crystalline cold that made Portland look like a snow globe. Emma and Daniel had planned a quiet evening dinner at her place, maybe watch the ball drop on TV. Nothing extravagant. But at 9 p.m., Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Change of plans. Meet me at the shop, please. Emma's heart jumped. She threw on a coat and drove through the quiet streets, wondering what he was planning. The last page was dark when she arrived, but she could see candlelight flickering inside. She tried the door, found it unlocked, and stepped into a space transformed. Daniel had strung up the old cafe lights, had set up a table in the center with candles and wine, and what looked like takeout from their favorite Thai place. Music played softly from somewhere jazz, the kind they'd listened to that first night they'd talk for hours. Hi, Daniel said, emerging from the back room. He was nervous, she could tell, excited but nervous. What is this? Emma asked, smiling. I've been thinking a lot about last pages and next chapters, about endings and beginnings. Daniel took her hands, and I realized something. This place, the last page, it was never really about coffee. It was about transition, about the space between what was and what could be. Daniel, let me finish. He smiled. I'm not reopening the coffee shop. I'm letting it go. The lease ends tomorrow, and I'm okay with that. But before I close this door completely, I wanted one last night here, with you, to say goodbye to what was and hello to what's coming. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. That's beautiful. Yeah, he pulled her close. I thought we could have dinner, talk about our plans for the new space, for the writing workshops, for whatever comes next. They ate Thai food by candlelight, talking about the future with an ease that would have terrified Emma 6 months ago. Daniel showed her sketches he'd made for the new space, not a coffee shop, but a community center, a place for writers and artists and people who needed somewhere to create. We could call it The Next Chapter, Emma suggested. Keep the theme going. Perfect. Daniel kissed her hand. You're perfect. I'm really not. You're perfect for me. That's what matters. At 11:30, they were slow dancing in the empty shop, the music soft and the candles burning low, when Daniel's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his face went very still. What? Emma asked. Sophie. He showed her the text. I called it off. The wedding. I couldn't do it. Thank you for being honest with me. I needed to hear it. Emma stared at the message. She called off the wedding? Apparently. Daniel watched her carefully. How do you feel about that? Emma thought about it. Thought about Sophie trapped in a relationship she didn't want, about David left at the altar, the way he'd left Emma in a different way. She thought about karma and justice and poetic endings. "I feel nothing," she said finally. "That's her life, her choice. I'm glad I'm not part of it anymore." "Good." Daniel pulled her back into his arms. "Dance with me." They swayed together as midnight approached, and Emma felt the strangest sense of completion. Like this moment, this dance in an empty coffee shop with a man who loved her on the edge of a new year was exactly where she was supposed to be. 30 seconds, Daniel said, checking his phone. "You ready for a new year?" "With you always." They counted down together, watching the numbers tick on his phone, 10:98. At midnight, as fireworks erupted somewhere in the distance and Portland welcomed 2025, Daniel kissed Emma. It was different from their first kiss, deeper, surer, full of promise instead of fear. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "Happy New Year, Emma Hart." "Happy New Year," Emma smiled. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being patient with me, for pushing me to be braver, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank you for letting me in, for trusting me, for choosing us even when it was scary." They stood in the candlelight, holding each other, and Emma felt something she'd thought she'd lost forever: hope. Real solid hope for a future that didn't involve armor or walls or constant vigilance against hurt. "So what now?" she asked eventually. "Now we go home," Daniels said. "We start the new year. We build something beautiful together." He kissed her again, soft and sweet. "And we keep choosing each other every day through the easy parts and the hard parts." "I can do that." "Yeah, yeah," Emma smiled. "I love you, Daniel Cooper." "I love you too." He grinned. "Want to get out of here, start our future." Emma looked around the last page one last time, this space where she'd learned to hope again, to trust again, to believe that maybe she deserved good things after all. Then she looked at Daniel, at his open, loving face, and knew she was ready. "Let's go," she said. They blew out the candles, turned off the lights, and locked the door behind them. Outside, snow was falling soft and clean, covering Portland in white. They walked to their cars holding hands, and Emma felt lighter than she had in years. This was it. The last page of her old story and the first page of something new. And she couldn't wait to see what they'd write together. The next chapter opened on a Saturday in June, 6 months to the day after that New Year's Eve kiss. Emma stood outside looking up at the sign she'd designed, elegant script on weathered wood, and felt pride swell in her chest. The space was perfect. Not Morrison Street, that property had gone to someone else. And Emma didn't care, but a converted library in Northeast Portland with high ceilings and huge windows in the exact right kind of light. Daniel had transformed it into something magical. Reading nooks and writing desks scattered throughout a small stage for readings and performances, a coffee bar in the corner run by Marcus, who'd followed Daniel from the last page. The walls were lined with books and local art, and there was a community board covered with announcements for writing groups and workshops. It was everything they'd imagined and more. "You ready?" Daniel appeared beside her, looking nervous and excited in the shirt Emma had helped him pick out. "Are you?" Emma took his hand, terrified, but in a good way. He squeezed her fingers. "Thank you for believing in this, for building it with me. Always." They walked inside together, where 50 people were already gathered, friends, future students, members of the community who'd heard about the new space and wanted to support it. Emma saw Dr. Morrison near the coffee bar, Marcus chatting with a group of college students. Daniel's publisher, who had come from New York specifically for this. She didn't see Sophie, hadn't seen or heard from her since that text on New Year's Eve. Last Emma heard, Sophie had moved to Seattle, started over fresh. David had apparently bounced back quickly, was already engaged to someone new. Emma wished them both well and meant it. Daniel gave a short speech thanking everyone, explaining his vision for the next chapter as a community space for storytellers and dreamers, and Emma watched him with her heart full. This man who'd been so lost when she met him, who'd found his way back to his passion with her help the way she'd found her way back to trusting with his. After the speech, as people milled around exploring the space, Daniel pulled Emma into a quiet corner. "I have something for you," he said, producing a slim package wrapped in brown paper. "What is it?" "Open it." Emma unwrapped it carefully, revealing a book. A real book, professionally bound with Daniel's name on the cover, The Last Page by Daniel Cooper. She opened it to the dedication page and read, For Emma, who taught me that the last page is just the beginning of something new. It's dedicated to me, Emma whispered, tears in her eyes. Of course it is. You're in every page, every word. Daniel pulled her close. None of this, the book, this space, the person I've become, none of it would exist without you. That's not true. It is. He kissed her forehead. You saved me, Emma. Not by fixing my problems, but by believing I could fix them myself, by being patient while I figured it out, by loving me even when I was lost. You did the same for me. Then I guess we saved each other. Emma laughed through her tears. I guess we did. They stood there holding each other while the next chapter buzzed with life around them, and Emma thought about how far they'd come. From two broken people, afraid to hope, to this, a thriving business, a solid relationship, a future full of possibility. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother, saw the article about the opening in the Portland Tribune. So proud of you, sweetheart. And below it, surprisingly, Sophie moved to Seattle. Seems to be doing better. Maybe someday you two can talk again. No pressure, just letting you know she's okay. Emma showed Daniel the texts. My mom wants Sophie and me to reconcile eventually. How do you feel about that? I don't know, maybe someday. Years from now, when it doesn't hurt anymore. Emma put her phone away. But not today. Today is about us. About this. About new beginnings, Daniel agreed. About next chapters. He smiled that slow, warm smile that still made Emma's heart skip. Want to know a secret? Always. I'm writing a new novel. Started it last month. Yeah, what's it about? It's about an architect and a writer who build something beautiful together. It's about second chances and scary choices and learning that being brave doesn't mean not being afraid. It means being afraid and doing it anyway. Emma's throat tightened. That sounds like a good story. It's the best story I've ever told because it's true. Daniel kissed her soft and sweet, and Emma tasted their future in it. Coffee and books and lazy Sunday mornings, arguments and makeups, building things together and tearing them down and building them again better. As they pulled apart, Emma looked around. The next chapter, their next chapter, and felt grateful for every painful step that had brought her here. For David's betrayal that led her to Portland. For Sophie's confession that freed her. For Daniel's coffee shop that brought them together. For all the last pages that had to end so this new story could begin. I love you, she said, meaning it with every fiber of her being. I love you too, Daniel replied, ready to see what happens next. Emma took his hand, looked at the room full of people and possibility, and smiled. Let's find out together.